Welcome to episode 1349 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
What's up, man? Did you hear me this morning? I was running in your neighborhood thanks to Apple Fitness, and they brought me around San Francisco, and I was like, Justin!
There we go. I did not hear you. I was asleep, thank God. When you were doing that, it was probably pretty early my time. So
Oh yeah. I left the house. It would have been about 5:30 your time.
Yeah, no, I'm not up that early unless I have to record with Paul on Fridays. But we're gonna talk about a little bit of news. News is rarely good this time of year when we do talk about news. So we're gonna talk about some bad news, and then we're gonna talk about some guys who are gonna be returning in 2025. Most of these guys didn't play at all in 2025. Some of them played very little. But we want to have kind of some discussions as people are starting to ramp up their prep. There are some people doing drafts right now. There are drafts on FBC right now. I am not one of them. I promise you that will not happen at least for another few weeks for me as I am just getting going on my projections. But
I am one of them. I have the XFL draft on this coming weekend. So I do have a draft, but it is the only draft that I will be doing until like January. I am cutting back and I am not getting like, let's draft like 5 times in December. No,
I'm not even doing the AFL draft. So I'm staying as far away from it as possible this year. This will be my first time going to the AFL and not doing the AFL draft. And I guess I'm sure there's still time for me to sign up. And
you can't even do Paul Stars because it's not an All-Star game this weekend.
I know that's crazy to me. So there will be a wiffle ball game. So
I will try not to get hurt this year.
Yes, please don't. So,
God, that raspberry lasted like 2 weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to meeting everybody and seeing everybody at Arizona Fall League this year. I fly in very early Friday morning. Are you getting in Thursday?
Thursday. I get in mid-morning Thursday, so I'll be around.
Perfect. So make sure if you are there for the first pitch Arizona, you come up and say hi and come hang out with us. We may or may not get World Series games while we're there because the Dodgers are already up 2-0. And we're not going to deep dive into the World Series. It has been 2 great games, though. I mean,
oh yeah,
I haven't loved the outcome of these games, but 2 great games so far. Dodgers up 2-0. The only problem is, and this transitions into our first bit of news, is last night Shohei Ohtani dislocates his left shoulder, sliding into second base. Does this have any effect on you for kind of upcoming drafts that might be early, especially as we're kind of awaiting some news here?
So they called it a shoulder subluxation, and it's his non-throwing shoulder, and it's also his back swing shoulder.
Yeah.
So I feel that mitigates some of the risk with that, because if it was his front shoulder, that would inhibit his ability to get extension. If it was his throwing shoulder, obviously that inhibits his ability to pitch. With it being his non-active shoulder, not to say that it wouldn't disrupt like even the rest of this World Series, not to say that it wouldn't disrupt things. I don't know. If it's hurt, it's hurt. I don't know if he can do any more damage to it. So maybe he tries to play through it. And just the presence of Ohtani in the lineup is still like he can walk, he can steal. Maybe he doesn't hit for as much power, but Yankee Stadium can be a little forgiving for that for lefties. So we'll see how this plays. But like I said, I'm not as concerned because it's his non-dominant activity shoulder.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. And I mean, obviously for, the rest of this series, there's probably nothing you can do unless you're playing DFS. But I would not use him in DFS because he's going to be really effing expensive. And you don't know what he's going to be like with this. I'm not as concerned about this, like being a long-term issue in terms of an injury, right? Like, right. I'm sure they will, if he needs surgery, they'll get him surgery. He'll be back probably, for the start of the season. My bigger issue is Ohtani currently is going as the number 1 player overall in drafts. Obviously, really, really early. My concern is how many bases do they let him steal after this? He's going to be pitching next year too. And I just have a feeling that, hey, the 50-50 season, it was amazing. It was groundbreaking, especially for a guy who is just a DH normally or a DH/pitcher. I think we don't see anywhere close to 50 stolen bases because I think they're going to put a red light on him coming into next year to prevent something like this from happening again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I could see it. Obviously, he went head first, and going feet first would be yes. There should be some downstream impact.
He was going feet first, wasn't he?
Oh, no, I thought it was head. Maybe I was wrong there. I thought it was head first.
He was going feet first, and it was the way he kind of fell back on his hands when he was going feet first that caused the injury.
My bad. Okay.
So I just, why are you going to risk your $700 million man or whatever he is?
No, he's only a $2 million man. He's 650.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I can't imagine they're going to let him steal at the rate that he did coming in next season, especially after something like this. I already had a feeling like, hey, we need to downgrade the speed potential on Ohtani, especially with him getting back on the mound and pitching. Now I am just petrified that he's going to steal 10 bases, if that. So not to say he doesn't still deserve to be a first round pick. I think he absolutely deserves to be a first round pick, but I think the gap between him and the field is going to shorten, or the field is going to pass him in a lot of regards in that first round. So
maybe it plays out like the Aaron Judge situation did, where we had Aaron Judge's foot is problematic. We have and then Aaron Judge goes out and has a monster season, and there was this a week and a half gap where his value was coming down, and then the way he played in April, you're like, oh well, see, we were right, and then he just went off after that. Because I want to say he had 3 homers towards the end of April, and it was see, we told you so. And then he was like, okay, I'll just hit 49 more the rest of the way.
Yeah, he's just insane the rest of the way. So, all right. Next piece of news is Nico Hoerner. He underwent surgery to repair his right flexor tendon. This kind of came out of nowhere. There was no reports about him having an elbow issue, much less a flexor tendon tear. How are you approaching this in off-season drafts? I know you're not drafting right now, but if you were, would you be kind of taking them off your board until we have more information?
Yes. And I would say, to tie it back in the XFL, Hoerner was on the fence as a keeper for me. I had him as, it was somebody that I could have kept, but I turned in keepers 2 weeks ago before this news came out. I decided not to keep him. This news just validates that, because his price point was I forget exactly what it was, but it was close to being no, maybe not. Maybe it was 16. But we don't know when he's going to be ready, and all of his value is tied up in his ability to hit. So it's a bit, if we take a step back with what's what he could do, and so no, I'm definitely moving him down my board. He not like he was on my board to, hey, I want to get this guy back on my XFL roster, but he's definitely down the list. As I do need a shortstop and a middle infielder for that, because I have Luis Garcia, one of the 10 of them in the league, as my second baseman. So, but Hoerner is not going to be one of those guys that I'm looking to add. I'm just a little scared now.
Yeah, I mean, Hoerner was going to be a pretty popular target for me. Especially considering the depth of second base and shortstop coming into the 2025 season. Especially at second base, where, Hoerner was looking like, he was the 9th second baseman off the board going at pick 159. I think at this point, you got to take him off your board. You just can't draft him until we know, because, I mean, even let's say he's out 6 months. I mean, 6 months puts him back potentially in play in April, but more likely you're probably missing him, through Memorial Day. And I just don't know
layoff. It's to get back to that layoff, because I always think back with position players when they have a essentially a pitching. Let's call it a pitching injury. I mean, if this was a pitcher, they would be out 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Right. With the flexor tendon repair surgery like this. I remember I always go back to like Carlos Quentin. When Carlos Quentin had TJ, he needed 6 to 7 months to resume throwing. And his first season back, and there's a couple other even Bryce Harper, more recently, how he kind of struggled out of the gate once he came back from his Tommy John. Now, flexor tendon surgery, different than Tommy John, but still it's that long layoff. Hitting is all about timing. Pitching is about disrupting that timing. And when you have all that type of layoff, it's just, these guys don't, all right, they're ready to come back. They're not 100%. They're not picking up where they left off. And well, in Hoerner's case, maybe he does because he wasn't doing too well, but towards the end of the season. So maybe he does pick up where he exactly left off, but it's not like, you can't look into this going, okay, 2024 was all injury. Once he's back in 2025, it'll be 2023 all over again. No.
Yeah, I mean, his biggest asset, too, is the fact that he can steal bases. Are they going to let him steal bases out of the gate when he's coming off of that kind of elbow issue, right? So
right.
I would say for right now, you take him off your board until we have a little bit more information. I probably will only project him for around 400 plate appearances, which will take him probably outside my top 20 second baseman, would be my guess. So unfortunate news for those of us like myself who are Nico Hoerner fans. All right, let's move into kind of our topic of the day. You said you want to talk about Spencer Strider and kind of his return in 2025. So I just built the whole topic around guys returning in 2025 because I think it's a really interesting list of some guys who either missed the majority of 2025 or 2025 entirely. Let's start with Spencer Strider, who was the number 1 or number 2 overall pick coming into drafts last year. Obviously gets Tommy John, and you don't get to use him on your fantasy team all year. He had the internal brace surgery. We mentioned this and talked a little bit about this on a recent episode over the course of the last month. The timetable coming back from that is a little bit quicker. Normally with Tommy John guys, we wouldn't be even considering them. But Spencer Strider is one of those guys that even if he doesn't hit 170, 180 innings, can be a real difference maker because of the strikeout potential and ratio potential. Where are you at on Spencer Strider for 2025?
So I'm way lower on workload thing, and this is why. So Justin will have a link in the show notes for those of you guys watching the video. I'm going to share screen again. I tend to do this once a show, but I want to share. I want to share screen to show the work that Joe Vergale has, and he has a tab that has UCL internal brace. Which tab? Which am I? Yeah, I'm sharing the right thing, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's got a tab, and so we have a total of 48 players. And notice I said players. I didn't just say pitchers. 48 players that have had this surgery. And when I was looking at this yesterday, because I was working on RotoWire player outlooks, and Strider and Senga were assigned to me. And by the way, Strider actually pitched more innings than Senga did this year, which kind of blew my mind. 9-5 was the final score. But when you look through this list, you don't have a lot. You have Garrett Whitlock, who had it this year, and we have Tyler Wells, who had it this year, and we have Patrick Sandoval had it this year. Loizaga, Spencer Strider had it, Lucas Giolito. So a lot of guys had it this year. And the reason why I bring that up is because of the newness of this. Because if you scroll down this list, it started in kind of like 2016, but there's not a lot of good success stories here. Seth Manis was like really the first guy that ever had this. Jesse Hahn, Matt Bush, Rich Hill, Rhys Hoskins as a player, Brian Wu. And it took me that long to get to a starting pitcher that's worked a volume of innings. But I would say my point here, Nick Anderson, and there's also Drew Rasmussen. So I'll stop sharing at this point. But it's been mostly relievers. And so with the starting pitcher, we have Drew Rasmussen was a starter before he had the internal brace. He came back this year as a reliever. He pitched 35 innings between AAA and the majors. Brian Wu, when Brian Wu had it in 21. The following season, he worked like 60 innings. So we don't have an example of a starting pitcher having internal brace procedure 1 year and coming back and working a lot. Right now, the record is like 60 innings. That's where it sits. And so I'm just concerned. I know that Strider went 1-1 in some leagues. I'm not saying he was going to go first round this year. But when you're looking at Spencer Strider, you almost, if you're going to take him, it really gets back to roster build type of situation. Who else have you put in your rotation? If you've, not that we don't know what Tyler Glasnow's arm is like, but let's say you took Tyler Glasnow as your first pitcher. You're really going to double tap and go to Spencer Strider and potentially get like 100 innings of that. Now, maybe really good 100 innings, but who knows where that situation comes from. So that's really the warning flag I wanted to raise is we're just going into uncharted territory. The internal brace procedure is great because it reduces the recovery time compared to full TJ. However, we do not have a list of, hey, these starting pitchers have come back and have done this and have picked up, like have resumed a good workload +1. If you look at the timeline, +1 from their surgery. Now, moving on, I mean, we've seen Rich Hill do it. Brian Wu did pitch some innings, had a triple-digit inning total this year. So these things can happen, but it's that first year coming back from it that hasn't been there. Now, Drew Rasmussen did look really good as a reliever for the 28 innings that he pitched for Tampa Bay. But I will tell you, I saw him pitch in AAA and didn't look good. But he found his sea legs and really closed the season out well with that. So honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Atlanta tried a similar path with Strider this year and used him out of the pen more than saying you're in the rotation. Let's see what you have. Because his body's gone through some things over the past 5 years. And I just this uncharted territory is really uncomfortable for me. The risk reward is really high, but I feel that the risk outweighs the reward in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think for me, like the big warning sign here on this list that you're helping provide for us is Brian Wu. Like Brian Wu, has had a lot of elbow issues over the course of the last years, and just feels like he's a ticking time bomb. And I mean, at least to me, and I've made that really, really clear whenever I've talked about Wu, is like I don't trust his long-term health on a per inning basis. I think he's a really great pitcher, but I just don't trust the health to stick around. And so, I'm not going to be drafting Brian Wu probably on any fantasy teams. So we start going to a guy like Spencer Strider when we're talking about, Strider is currently going as the number 38 pitcher. That includes probably about 5 or 6 relievers. So pretty close to a top 30 starter, pick 90 overall, 91 overall so far in these early drafts. And I just feel like that is a huge risk to take. Now, there's a lot of upside. Like I said, we're talking about a guy that in 170 innings could have 220 something strikeouts, right? But I just don't know that the risk is worth the reward, especially when we know the guys coming back from these type of surgeries can struggle with command and control,
right?
And give up more home runs, give up more walks. I just don't know if the risk is going to be worth what the price is, especially once people see him pitch, right? As soon as spring training starts and you see an inning or two from Spencer Strider, all of a sudden he's going to jump up into the top 50, maybe even into the top 30 picks. And that to me is going to be insane. I will not have any part of that.
Because he's going to look good in a 2-inning stint.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to look fantastic. He's going to come in. He's going to go 2 innings and mow down 5. And all of a sudden people would be like, oh, Spencer Strider, second or first round pick. And that to me is going to be insane. So
I mean, Rich Hill is the best. Honestly, Rich Hill would be like the best. When I look at Rich Hill had his internal brace on October 1st of 2019. He came back in July of 2020. That season, whatever. He pitched 38 innings that year, but then he came back and worked 158.2 the next year. So, and we're talking about and that was as a 41-year-old man. So I would say, if you're in a reset league, it's a different valuation. If you're in a keeper league and Strider was thrown back, this is a 3-year investment type of thing. It's okay. You're going to take a loss in year 1, but year 2 and year 3, there could be a nice path forward. So I would look at it from 2 different ways. I'd be more interested if I was in a keeper league draft where Strider's back in the pool this year versus a reset league.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm I'm probably going to steer clear of a guy like Spencer Strider. What about Shane McClanahan? Next guy. Well, we'll get to Shane McClanahan in a little bit. Let's talk about Felix Bautista, who's returning from Tommy John as well. Now, this is a guy who was an elite closer when he was on the mound, and now he's only going to go back to being like a late inning bullpen guy, a closer. Is he someone you're going to be targeting because he doesn't need to go super deep into games? He just needs to do that one inning at a time.
Right. So he is, his surgery date was October 9, 2023. So he's now a year removed. My timeline, regular listeners of this, me, it's like 2 years later, get me interested. I've said recently that I may need to adjust that timeline based off the internal brace and all the different times. But with the reliever, I'm a little more lenient because they don't have to. It's like Bautista is effectively wild to begin with. That's part of his success. Yeah. And so I'm not as scared off by him that I would be if he was a starting pitcher. And let's be real, Baltimore has an opening. So
they do.
They could bring him back. But like I said, his surgery, hopefully he gets some winter ball action. We can see if anything's happening, but he'll be somebody you watch in spring training and then go from there. But I don't think, as long as he looks good, Baltimore's going to give him the job. I don't see them going out and trying to sign somebody else again. That didn't work out well this winter.
I mean, the only problem again is going to be the price, right? We're already 7 drafts in. He's going at pick 61 now.
Wow.
Like, he's already going right behind Raciel Iglesias, ahead of Johan Duran. Like that, I had going ahead of Robert Suarez. I could see him going like around pick 90 or 100, and you go, okay, I think I'll take the gamble there. But it's so hard. Like, I guess Yunier Cano is the next man up if something happens to Bautista, but I feel like you're having then to waste a draft pick on the handcuff. Like, and that's just not something I love to do when you have limited roster spots.
So while you're looking at that, where's Liam Hendriks going?
I'm sure way later. Let's see. Liam Hendriks is going pick 285 on average.
Wow. And so,
I would rather go with Liam Hendriks.
That's kind of where I was getting. So, like, we saw the news that right now that Hendriks and Justin Slayton are in competition for closer role moving forward. And it's just like, for me, and Hendriks had his surgery on August 2nd. So his surgery was 2 months. He's got 2 months, 2 more months of recovery time than Bautista's had with that. Because I was trying to go back and look and say, okay, who did we have? Like, who had surgery in 2022 that we could say, okay, they made it back wherever things, but we had a lot of 2023 surgeries as I scroll down this list. And, Shane Baz had his surgery in late September 2022. It took him a bit, even this season, to come back and look good. But towards the end of the season, Shane Baz was looking good. Walker Buehler had his at the end of August in 2022. Again, not that many like, oh, wow, success stories, if you will. They're just not here. And so I really can't get behind Bautista going in the top 100. I just can't.
Yeah, it feels pretty risky, especially when we're talking about a very small player pool of closers that you can rely upon. I don't know that Bautista coming off of Tommy John is in that bucket yet. So if he was going around pick 150, I would feel a lot better about taking the gamble, or even around pick 100. I'd feel a lot better about taking the gamble.
Remember how much we liked David Bender this time last year?
Yeah.
Bednar.
Yeah.
I work with a guy, his last name Bender. Bednar. So David Bednar. We liked him a lot this time last year.
But I mean, to that point though, like, yes, Bednar did not finish off the season well. But we're also like, like you look at his season as a totality, you still got 23 saves. Yes, the ERA sucked, but like you still got your save total.
Saves. Oof.
Yeah. Like you still got the saves from him, still got the strikeouts from him. Just everything else kind of went off the rails, kind of the second half of the season. I just, to me, I don't know that I trust taking a guy in the top 75 that is coming off of TJ. Like, it just, to me, that just seems a little insane. Let's talk about Kodai Senga, because Senga, missed the majority of 2024. I think he missed the entire season, right? Yeah, he missed the entire actual. Oh no, sorry. He threw 5 innings and a third in the season, and then threw 5 postseason innings. The 5 innings in the season were great.
Yep.
3.38 ERA. He had 9 strikeouts in that 5 and a third inning. Only walked one guy, only walked one guy. The postseason is a different story. He looked absolutely atrocious in the postseason, through 5 innings, gave up 7 earned runs, only struck out 4, walked 7, gave up a home run to boot in that as well. Is this a sign of, hey, this is what happens with guys coming off of TJ? You're going to get 5 really good innings and then 5 really, really bad innings. And it's really hard to predict when and where it comes from. And for that reason, will you be drafting a guy like Senga? Or do you think, hey, he's now going to have a whole offseason to prepare. He's going to be even further removed from his well, I guess he didn't have Tommy John.
No.
He's going to be further removed from his offseason or his in-season surgery. Are you interested in Kodai Senga, who's going at pick 123 on average right now?
So I will say yes, and I'm going to say why. So looking back at 2024 lessons learned, and this is how I summarized Senga's RotoWire outlook. So when they start publishing them, you'll see it. I suggest treating Senga like Chris Sale in 2024 going into the draft. I know some people were like, hey, I like Chris Sale. I was one of those. No, absolutely not. And I ate a giant shit burger. I mean, the guy's going to win the Cy Young, get Triple Crown. Just like, I avoided that, but it's like, that's what Senga's upside is. Senga has all of that upside with the ability, with his cutter, with the ghost fork, with the fastball. He can be damn unhittable at times. Now, he pitched 5 innings because he had the shoulder fatigue issue. And then his first start back, tears his calf in the first start. That was it. And so all that rust and layoff, and that's what happens in the postseason. They rushed him back because they knew what he was capable of. But again, you don't come back at 100% right out of the gate. So I want to approach Senga like I should have approached Chris Sale last year. The talent's there. If everything works together, and let's be real, every pitching draft, every investment in pitching is a risk. But if you could get the return on investment, if you look at the skills, it's tough to argue what Senga brings to the table. So that's, to me, is like applying one of those immediate lessons learned from this past season. I aggressively faded Chris Sale, and I had chances to take him even at a dip, and I wasn't taking him because I was scared of the recent history. And there's a reason why I didn't win any fantasy leagues this year. That was one of them. So that's my lesson to you all is I'm not running away from Senga here. I think the risk reward, or I believe that the risk reward here is too enticing to pass. Not going to reach, but I'm not going to ignore a dip either. I mean, Chris Sale was falling in close to the 10th round, and it was just there for the taking, and I was still passing on him. I wouldn't do the same with Senga.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you here. My only problem is kind of who Senga is going around that I really, really like. I mean, Spencer Schwellenbach is the pitcher going right ahead of Kodai Senga right now. Senga, like I said, going pick 123. Spencer Schwellenbach going around pick 120. Zach Gallen, Max Fried also going a bit ahead of him. But then you got Justin Steele, you've got Brian Wu, you've got Sonny Gray, you've got Ronaldo Lopez, Shane McClanahan, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, Jared Jones, Kevin Gausman, Robbie Ray, Shane Boz, Luis Heel, all going after him within 30 picks. I'm going to take a lot of those guys over Kodai Senga just because I feel like the floor is safer. Now, I understand the upside argument that Senga has that ability to be kind of a top, 15 starting pitcher, too. And I just feel like their floor is much, much safer with the injury kind of recency bias here.
Fair. I mean, because it's funny you mentioned a lot of those names there. I'm like, yeah, those guys are on my XFL team. Like, Steve, I have like that kind of path. I think one of the things I'm concerned about with Schellen, I want to call him Schellenberger, Schwellenbach, just the amount of the workload. You know, I'm kind of a workload honk, and I look at his jump. He worked 155% more innings. Just innings, not even pitches, just innings. He worked 65 innings between two levels of A ball in 23, and then went 32 innings at A, 13 and double A, and 123.2 at the majors. That's a massive, massive workload jump. We don't know what the bounce back. I mean, you think back to this time last year, and I was like all about, please don't reach for Zach Gallen. This is going to be problematic. I was saying the same thing about Spencer Strider too, but I was not trying to predict injury. I was just saying this was a big jump. This is a young body. We don't know how that body's going to react to such a workload the following year. Same concerns with Schwellenbach myself. So that's where, like, I would rather take Senga over Schwellenbach. Now the safety, like if people are trying to fade risk reward and ignoring workload, but like Schwellenbach pitched great. He pitches for Atlanta. They'll be fully healthy. Who can be as unhealthy as they were this past season, right? So he'll have a good supporting cast. I'm going to take him over Senga. This is where, like, this, and I probably would have been that guy last year, this time. But having learned that history, I'm like, I'm going to switch. I'm going to, like, you know what? I'm going to go Senga here. I'm going to take that risk reward and let somebody else chase what Schwellenbach brings to the table and see if the young body holds up to that, how he rebounds from such a big workload that he had.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Schwellenbach fan. I think anybody who's listening to the show knows how much I love Schwellenbach. So I'm going to probably be in on that. It'll be interesting because we'll talk about, like I said, we're going to talk about Shane McClanahan here in a minute. And I think I would take Senga over McClanahan. And I think I would take Schwellenbach maybe over some of these other guys. Take Senga over some of these other guys like Brian Wu. I mentioned, I feel like his arm is just waiting to explode. Carlos Rodon is terrible on the road and but fantastic at home. I think I'm going to probably take Senga there. But there are a few of these guys, you know, Jared Jones. Give me Jared Jones, right? Depending on what Kevin Gausman looks like in spring, I'm probably going to take Kevin Gausman. Because I feel like the floor on these guys or on some of these guys are just a tad bit better than they are on Senga.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's talk about one of our few hitters that we have on this list. Obviously, pitchers, you know, are the majority of the season, but Matt McLain missed the entire season after a huge breakout in 2023. A lot of expectations coming in 2024. Gets a shoulder injury, misses the entire season. He should be back for 2025. He's currently going a round pick. Of course, I lost it. Because I'm not on hitters, which is the issue. He's going to pick 129, currently going right behind guys like Jake Berger and JT Realmuto, and ahead of Adolis Garcia and Luis Garcia Jr. Where are you at on Matt McLain, who's going to come into the season with second and shortstop eligibility?
The eligibility, certainly. I was just I'm looking at my draft board's all over the place. I'm still getting other data. I'm getting old data, even though I said, please give me from October 1st. I'm seeing 1,533 drafts. There are not that many sickos.
No.
But
there's 7 drafts so far. So he's going to pick his min pick is 99. His max pick is 154 right now.
All right. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing this, but it's showing all this. Oh, well. But I was just trying to, so at least it gives me a way to look at it and say, where were we this time last year? Now we have 7 picks. Okay. So I just like to look at, so like you said, he's going just behind Jordan Westberg, who also has dual eligibility. He's going just in front of, literally just in front of Luis Garcia Jr. Then we got Nico Hoerner, about 2 rounds. If you're in a 15-team league, 2 rounds behind him. So that's kind of that. McLain and Garcia are sitting right there at that 8th, 9th round in a 15-team league. When I look at this, and then Hoerner would be 11th with Terang and Bogarts and Stott in that next tier. For me, I don't have a problem paying this price because looking at that next tier, like I don't see how they're any much better. Like if I wait that out and say, okay, I'm going to sit out the, 15 times 7's 105, 15 times 8, 120. So we're looking, like I said, 8th, 9th round. If I skip out on that, then I'm looking at these other situations and they're known knowns. And I don't know if the additional risk associated with some of those guys is worth passing on what McLain can have for upside because of dual eligibility and where he plays and the division in which he plays. I think there's a lot of good there for him. He's also playing instructional league, according to the news. So that'll certainly help. And, I don't have a problem with this price. I'm not running away from it. I may take Garcia over him, but I mean, this is 2 spots of ADP. It's no big deal. But I don't see myself saying, I'm just going to pass and I'm going to wait on the Stott, Rafaela, Rengifo, Gleyber Torres. I'm going to wait on that pocket. No, I have no problem making this kind of bump, especially in an OBP league.
I think I am going to wait. I think I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to ignore. Paul and I kind of talked about this a little bit, kind of more in reference to the tier above McLain, the Marte, Albies, Altuve tier. Like, if I don't get someone I really love, I think I'm just going to wait. Like, there are so many good options in second.
It's not a deep position.
But there's a lot of intriguing guys.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you've got Xavier Edwards going pick 177. Gleyber Torres, who turned his season around. He's going to probably be in a different location, but, pick 181. Andres Jimenez, who just feels, pretty safe, 188. Jackson Holiday, if you're looking for upside, 215. Mikel
Garcia, 219.
Yeah, 219. Like, even Colt Keith, pick 240. Give me that all day long.
Zach Geloff in Sacramento at 222 in the volume.
Jonathan India leading off for the Reds, like 263. Like, give me a lot of these guys going late. A rebound of Ha-Seong Kim, 273. Like,
there's quantity here. I just to me, like, I can see second base being a popular position to fade as they go through. But like, I'll just take one of the later routes because the star power kind of
it dwindles. Yeah. You've got Mookie Betts, who's the clear kind of top guy in that, and like, and that's a good reason to target Mookie Betts in the first round. He's going to be triple eligible.
Yeah.
And the rest of the depth of second base is fairly questionable. But I think Ketel Marte is going too high. I think Ozzie Albies is probably going too high. I love Altuve. I love Simeon. I think they're actually both kind of discounts, especially Simeon, with the volume he gives you. The problem with me with McLain is the volume, right? Like, I just don't know what that is going to look like after a completely lost season.
Yeah.
And how much are we banking on that 2023 was real, right? Like, we have very little data of him being, good or great, and just a lot of data of him missing time.
I mean, he was great on the entirety of 2023 when you added up 28 homers, 24 steals, on base percentage close to 400, batting average 320. I mean, he was on the whole 2023 was magical. But
how long did it take Cody Bellinger to come back from those shoulder issues, right? Like, there's no guarantee that he's going to come back super healthy. I don't think the price is egregious. I think 129 is a fine price for him. I don't have an issue with it. I just think for me, and this will obviously be the theme of the show, at least coming from me, is like, I try to stay away from those guys that I have a really hard time projecting playing time. I have a really hard projecting health. And I just think the risk isn't worth the reward in a lot of scenarios.
I can see that.
Let's talk about a guy who did play, a fair amount in 2024, but missed a lot of the season due to injury. This is not something new for Mike Trout. He played in 29 games. He had 126 plate appearances. 10 home runs, 6 stolen bases in 126 plate appearances is pretty damn good did hit 220, which is not good. Missed a lot of time with knee issues. Where are you at on Mike Trout?
So, I mean, last year was the first year that I had actually had him on a team because the price, I felt like, okay, the price was good. You don't have to overreach for it. And, like I said, he was out there running. The 6 steals he had, the batting average, that was unfortunate. I really don't know how to. The only thing I could think of is he didn't have the Ohtani presence around. And so maybe he was trying to press to pick up the slack. I really don't understand where things were going.
He got really unlucky in the batting.
Because he was making better. He wasn't even striking out. He was making better contact.
He had 194 BABIP. His XBA was 273. If he was hitting 273, we're not discussing batting average.
Exactly. I mean, he had the steals. He had more steals in 32 games that he had over the previous 4 seasons. I'm sorry, the same amount. He had 6 from 2020 to 2023. Then he had 6 in a month. And so it's like, oh, he had 10 homers. Oh, he had 6 steals. This could be it. This could be it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, boom, up, knee, and he's done for the year. And that's the crazy part. So it's, I mean, ADPY, he's going 142. In the outfield, he's going just after Christian Yelich, who's another giant question mark, and in front of Pete Crow Armstrong and Jason Dominguez, too high. Ian Happ, Colton Cowser. Like I'm gonna let Trout pass this year, and maybe that burns me. But again, we're talking about in the last 4 full seasons, he has exactly 1 with more than 400 plate appearances.
I think this is really an interesting discussion because not so much about Trout himself, because I think we all kind of know, Trout is a guy that when he's healthy, he's still an elite talent, but it's hard to know what you can project for him in terms of plate appearances. I think it's a really interesting discussion about the depth of the outfield because you've got, obviously some studs kind of in the top 20 to 25. And then there seems to be a massive kind of drop off in terms of talent, or at least in terms of, red flags that go wrong with the talent. I mean, when you're talking about Mike Trout going in the same kind of sphere as a Cody Bellinger coming off of a disappointing year, Lawrence Butler, what is Lawrence Butler at this point? Do we know? Adolis Garcia is coming off a disappointing year.
Arozarena and Garcia were 2 guys that were top 50 picks last year, and their ADP currently is like 1. They're both in the 120s.
Now you're also then, you mentioned Christian Yelich coming off of, another injury issue. Pete Crow Armstrong, Jason Dominguez, like, hey, really, really intriguing talents. What are their roles? What is their upside actually? What's their downside? Like, there's a lot of question marks going around. So, like, I initially was going to be like, hey, I don't really want Mike Trout, but I think there's so many guys with massive question marks here. I don't mind taking him. He's not going to be a target for me necessarily, but like I could see myself if I'm in a draft where Mike Trout falls to like pick 160 or 170. All of a sudden, I'm taking a gamble on Mike Trout, especially if the rest of my offense looks pretty stable.
Get your outfielders early. I mean, you look through and you've got, Betts, Chisholm, Merrill, Cruz, Steer, Bellinger, and that's all in the top 30. And all those guys have multi-position eligibility. So they're even more likely to be good. So it's like, okay, we've got 25 outfielders in the first 8 rounds that are there. And then you start, like I said, scrolling through, and then even some of that depth, the Rafaela, the Renjifos, the Burlesons, the Fitzgerald, Toglia, Edmund, who's going to have some hype after this postseason he's had, Morel, Castro. It's like all of a sudden it can dry up, and mono league guys particularly. This could be problematic. So pay up for your outfielders, because like I said, you start going down, you're like, what happened to this position? This used to be like you could always wait, and there's always guys laying around here. And I'm like, now I'm in the 40s, and I'm just like, I got this stink face look. I'm like, ew, I don't want any of these guys anymore.
I mean, even the guys at the top, like, I mean, like obviously Aaron Judge is a stud, but I still worry about Aaron Judge's, season to season health. Kyle Tucker's coming off of a ton of missed time. Juan Soto's Juan Soto. I mean, I think Juan Soto should probably be the number 1 outfielder. But Mookie Betts missed time. Tatis missed time. Acuna obviously missed a ton of time. We probably should have put him on this list to discuss. Corbin Carroll was awful for a large part of the season. Julio Rodriguez is awful for the large part of the season. Yordan Alvarez had his own injury issues. I think Jarren Duran was amazing. I think Jackson Chourio was amazing.
How about James
Jackson
Wood at 47?
Yeah, that's a Michael Harris going right above him at 44. Like those are two guys that are massive question marks. But we're taking inside the top 50 picks right now. Like, outfield is a mess. This may be the first year I think I've ever said that in fantasy where I don't know what to do with outfield.
Yep, I got to start fishing down because last year when I was looking at outfield bargains, Brenton Doyle was very high on my list, and that paid off very nicely. Lawrence Butler, somebody that I mentioned in season when I did the first time. I was on Baseball HQ podcast twice, and Patrick always asked for people, and I was like, get on Lawrence Butler. The data, he should be doing a lot better than the results, and sure enough, he took off. That was an in-season thing. And then, Tyler O'Neill was somebody else I had, and Jarren Duran was somebody that I had a lot of coming into it. But I need to start looking down the bottom and say, like, who can make that jump up? Because that's where it comes in. Trying to just scrolling through. It's like, oh, hey, look, there's Dalton Varsho, 75th overall. No, I'm done with that. Joe Adell, who I can never quit, is 78th. But we need somebody from the bottom who's going to make that jump this year. That's where the value can be had. I'm curious to see, like, Stanton. Stanton so far has an ADP of 322. I'm curious to see where the postseason carries him.
That's got to come up, right?
It has to, but 7 drafts, and he's got the outfield eligibility on this, which is weird to me. Why does he have that? Because he should only be utility.
That is a very good question. NFBC may not have updated their thing yet. Yeah, he's going to be
this year at all. He every game he played was I mean, I kept him in XFL because I have him for $8, and I'm one an hour. But yeah, he didn't play a single outfield.
So that is one of the things they warn people about. Coming into drafts this early, if you're going to draft early, is that until after the World Series is over, they don't update positions. So guys who had previous position eligibilities that won't still show up on their player page. So just be mindful of that if you're doing early drafts.
So I'm eyeballing Jhonkensy Noel, 369, 93rd outfielder off the board. That's got to come up.
Yeah, that's going to come up a lot. All right, let's talk about the aforementioned Shane McClanahan. I've mentioned him quite a bit throughout this episode, but we haven't talked about him yet. He's coming off of Tommy John surgery as well. You're a Rays guy. What's your interest in McClanahan?
Oh, I really wish he could have come back and pitched this year. It would have made me feel a lot better with things. That's where I'm concerned. I'd like to see guys pitch before I draft them. And when I looked at, so McClanahan had a surgery on August 21st of 2023. So we will be, by the time the regular season starts, we will be 19 months removed from his surgery. So again, going back to my previous timeline that I said I was willing to adjust, and workload wise, they've always tried to manage these guys. Glasnow is not his most recent example, but he kind of manages himself with all of his injuries, right? So we don't really have what they would do with him. I would say I don't see him. I see him coming closer to his 2021 workload of 123 innings than I do the 166 that he put up in 2022. I don't see him. I see him making the rotation out of camp. I don't see him taking the ball every 5 days and going 6-7 innings every time he has the ball. That's kind of where I sit with him. Maybe he's 2 times through, especially kind of early. Maybe he's 2 times through and then he's out, but they manage him a little slower out of the gate. But like I said, I really wish I would have seen him pitch. We would have had the opportunity to see him pitch during the at the end of the regular season or something, but never had that opportunity once they decided they weren't going to make the playoffs. That wasn't happening. So we and maybe that kind of holds down his value, because right now he's going 129.
Yeah, it's way too high. Like,
wow.
I mean, we know guys.
I can't get behind this price at all.
We know guys struggle with command and control coming back from Tommy John. We know that that guys have decreased workloads coming off of Tommy John. I know he's had a long period in between surgeries, but I can't imagine taking him as a top 150, top 100 guys where he's going to be once he starts pitching.
I can get Sean Manaea 5 rounds later right now.
Yeah, no, there's no way. I'm like the fact he's going right there next to Justin Steele, above Jared Jones. Robbie Ray, Robbie Ray had a lot of struggles coming back, but we expect those struggles. Like now, Robbie Ray should be full go coming into 2025. Like I can't get behind the price on McLain.
I mean, you need innings. At the end of the day, it all comes down to innings. And I could say, if we had a crazy way of tracking board bets type of thing, I could say the amount of innings that Shane McClanahan and Spencer Strider throw combined will be less than 5 other starting pitchers do by themselves.
It wouldn't surprise me. It absolutely.
Maybe 10 starting pitchers. If I were to pick a particular one, like Aaron Nola is going to throw more innings than Strider and McClanahan do combined. That kind of bet. So it gets back to the roster kind of thing. If you took a dart and we're like, Strider's going to pitch, I don't care what Jason said. I don't care. History be damned. He's pitching. It's if you've done that, then how do you come back and McClanahan's sitting here in the 8th round? I'm jumping on McClanahan too. Then you better just, maybe you just fill your bench with starters at that point, and you're just streaming guys in every week to try to make up for what could potentially be a big gap in your pitching plans if those guys do trend the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I'm just not willing to construct my roster that way. All right, let's finish out with one rookie coming back from Tommy John, or a guy who we expect to be a rookie coming back from Tommy John, and then potential closer. We're going to move fairly quickly because you have an appointment to go get to here in a little bit.
Jabs. Go ahead.
There you go. Andrew Painter coming back from Tommy John. This was a top-tier pitching prospect that was on the cusp of making it to the majors when he went down with Tommy John. He just threw 3 innings, I think, either last night or the night before in Arizona Fall League. Looks pretty good down there. We're going to get to go see him, hopefully, maybe this upcoming weekend, if his pitching or if his time in the rotation is still going on and he's actually on the bump for this any games this weekend. Where are you at on Andrew Painter?
So he has not pitched since 2023 early spring training when all that noise was around, and he hasn't pitched since then. He ended up having a surgery in late July of 2023. So we've also said this a million times in this podcast. Surgery is not your first option. You don't rush to surgery. It's never guaranteed. So they tried to avoid the surgery, couldn't avoid it. He ended up having it. So he will be close to 2 years removed for that, but he's also 21 years old. And that to me is just scary. He'll be 22 2 weeks after opening day. You sickos that are drafting right now and taking him inside the top 300 are sick. You're just sickos. I don't know. I don't know how you. I don't know. I don't know if he pitches in the major leagues this year. I really don't.
Really? I think
if he does, it's maybe later in the season. But like we said, we need volume, and I'm just staring at. Yes, they're full of flaws, but Chris Bassett and Bueller and Littell and they've got all the David Peterson. You have all these other names that we know are going to pitch, and they're going to pitch 100+ innings if they don't get hurt. And then we're looking at Painter, who I don't know. Are they really going to try to put him in a major league rotation at 21 years old, coming off of major arm surgery?
I definitely think he's the guy that is better for drafting holds where you can stash, right?
Maybe I mean, these are probably all draft and holds anyhow, but he's still being taken too early in a draft and hold.
I don't know that he's going pick 291 right now. He's going ahead. I mean, I think you're right. There are some names he's going ahead of where I'm going, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, wouldn't I rather just have Brady Singer? I know Brady Singer is going to be in the rotation the entire year for for the Royals, whereas Painter probably starts the year in AAA because he never pitched in AAA.
Right.
But that being said, like he did go out and throw 3 innings, 3 scoreless innings, hit 98 through all of his pitches in Arizona Fall League. We're talking about November, right? Like by the time we get to spring, like he should be ready to go. I think the big question is, do the Phillies really need him in the rotation to start the year if they come in healthy? Currently, they have Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and Taijuan Walker. Like, yes, I know Taijuan Walker isn't the guy that he was, or they thought he was going to be when they signed him to a long-term deal, but he's going to be in the rotation to start the year. So I think Painter does start the year in the minors. So do you want to stash a guy for as long as you're going to have to stash him to start the season? I think is the better question. I think I'm willing to take the gamble, especially once we get news that he's probably not going to start in the rotation. I think he goes outside of the top 300 picks. I'm kind of in on this Andrew Painter gamble.
How much do you feel that the Andrew Painter status currently is related to the success that we saw with Skeens and Jones, and to an extent, Kyle Harrison this year? I bring these names up because all 3 of these guys were 22 years old this season, and those are 3 of the 4 pitchers of that age that worked more than 100 innings, and the 4th guy is Joey Estes. But I'm looking at a list of 19 pitchers ages 22 or younger that pitched in the major leagues in 2024. As I mentioned, those 4 guys pitched 100 innings. Justin Martinez was at 72.2. I mean, Martinez had a great year. Birdsong was at 72. We have Jackson Jobe made the very late appearance, but he was hurt. Hurston Waldrep made an appearance. Smith Sharver, but we just don't have a lot of guys at this age. Now, it could Painter be? I don't know. I don't
think Skeens is the guy. I mean, Skeens.
So it's Jones. So you could say he's kind of like Jared Jones then.
Yeah, and Jared Jones threw 95 innings, or sorry,
121.2 to a 4.14 ERA and a 1.19 WHIP.
Yeah, but I mean, it also
punchies.
Yeah, the 132 punchies that make it really, really interesting. You're talking about Philadelphia, good team, gives you a lot of win potential. I think this is a decent gamble. I'm not saying he's going to be on every single one of my teams, but I think I'm going to take some calculated gambles, especially if I've got a pretty strong, safe rotation coming into around pick 300. Because at pick 300, he doesn't really hurt you if he doesn't work out, right? Like you can drop pick 300 2 weeks into the season and be like, hey, you know what? I took the gamble. I didn't get anything from him, but like whatever, you're dropping a guy that, you got, I don't know what, round 20 something. So I think this is a pretty decent gamble if you're a believer in Andrew Painter, and he looks, like I said, looked good in that first start down in the Arizona Fall League.
So if we were to frame it, if we framed it into like maybe he's Jared Jones, right? I'm looking at the player rater for Jared Jones right now. Jared Jones finished the season with $3 of earned fantasy value, the 88th starting pitcher, 109th overall pitcher, and his overall rank was 286. So if we're based off that framing, then 298 for Painter's not bad. If you think Painter could be Jared Jones, then he's effectively priced.
Yeah.
Especially when you add in the fact him making this type of workload jump, because again, Jared Jones did what he did, but Jared Jones also threw 126 innings the season before, not 0. And that's the difference. It's like he could be Jared Jones, and maybe he does this. And again, we're talking about a guy going from 0 to something versus a guy going from 122 to 130. 132 and 2/3 between AAA and the majors, like Jared Jones did.
Yeah, I think it's fair. All right, we're gonna skip the last one so you can get out to your appointment. Want to remind everybody where you can reach on social media, and then plug anything you got going on.
Come find me over at Jason Collette at Blue Sky. I see a lot more baseball folks coming over this month, so it's been awesome to be interacting with it. And watching all the stuff in the World Series. I watched the entirety of Game 1 with Rob McCabe. Came over to my house. I did not watch everything last night. I had to run around and pick up some kids, so I kind of got started and kind of got it at the end. So I missed the middle. I basically, it was like right at the time Ohtani got hurt is when I turned it back on, which is why I didn't see how he slid. I just saw him laying in the dirt. I'm like, oh. So yeah, we're doing that, working on profiles right now. I don't have any articles that I haven't done in the last couple of weeks because it's been all about getting player outlooks done at RotoWire, and presentations for this coming weekend at First Pitch Arizona. I've got a panel. I'm doing the very first panel of the afternoon Thursday with Ray Murphy and Joe Orico. And then I've got one with that Ariel Cohen's hosting, and Tristan Cockcroft and I are the subjects that he is asking questions / interviewing with. So I've got 2 things to do, plus the XFL draft where I need some OBP, let's say. So I have kept a lot of power. I have Jake Berger and I have different guys like that, but I need some, I'm going to need to find some OBP because my keepers in that particular, I kept Jake Berger, Royce Lewis, Junior Caminero, Luis Garcia, Rosarena, Noel, and Stanton. Those are my hitters. And so I need to find some guys that can get some OBP. And then I love my staff. Steele and Brown and Manaya, Francis, Kikuchi. I kept Hoffman on a spec that he's going to land a closer role in free agency this winter. And so, yeah, I got to build, and I've got $155 to at my disposal. So that'll be fun.
You can reach me on social media at Justin Mason FWFB. I am writing this all season. I haven't written a ton yet, but I did drop my first apology tour, talking about my Tout Wars kind of debacle this year, drafting a guy like or getting Acuna for $61 in the auction, and then having to figure out how to make up for that, which I wasn't able to. So, but I'll have a lot more apology and some redemption tour stuff coming out here over the course of the next few weeks. I'm also going to be working tirelessly on projections, which will be available on the Patreon, and then maybe some other interesting stuff as well. Recording this podcast and the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. In Arizona, I'm on, I think, the Factor Flukes hitter one, or maybe it's just the hitter profiles. I don't know. I'm with Jeff Erickson and Vlad Sedler and Ryan Bloomfield Saturday morning, and then I'll be recording with you and Paul. I think are we recording Friday? Is that one? I think
Friday afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
somebody on the Sheehan Slack channel was like, "Man, it's gonna be weird without the late night stuff." And I'm thinking, I don't think it's gonna matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, it shouldn't matter. At the same time, like I want my time slot, right? Like, how did we get bumped from the Saturday night time slot? I don't know. There will be discussions had, but if you are in Arizona, definitely come up, say hi, come talk some baseball with us. It's just one of my favorite weekends of the year, and we're gonna have an absolute blast. I wish I was coming out for longer, but for some reason they decided to schedule it Halloween, so I'm only coming out for a quick trip from Friday to Sunday, but it should be a ton of fun. Looking forward to seeing you, Jason.
Indeed, man.
Yeah, that's gonna wrap us up for this
too
episode.
Long since I've been able to get a big bear hug. So
there we go, baby. We're gonna get it done. For Jason and myself, thank you for listening. Have fantastic baseball off season.
Thanks, guys.